Welcome. That was so much funnier in my head. Anyway, welcome to episode 2 of our ESI series, Factor Fairytale, as we kind of journey through Holy Week and into the evidence of the resurrection. Yesterday, we looked specifically at one of the objections to the resurrection, the swoon theory. It's one of the anti-resurrection theories. If you haven't watched that, you're going to want to stop here and go back to watch that, and everything will make more sense that way. But today we're going to explore 2 more anti-resurrection theories that stand as objections to the resurrection. And so let's begin. Objection number 2 was the stolen body theory. Matthew 28 verses 12 to 15 says, when the chief priests had met with the elders and devised a plan, they gave the soldiers a large sum of money, telling them, you are to say his disciples came during the night and stole him away while we were asleep. If this report gets to the governor, we will satisfy him and keep you out of trouble. So the soldiers took the money and did as they were instructed, and this story has been widely circulated among the Jews to this day. And so we see where this theory actually got started. And if we're going to look honestly at the stolen body theory, then we have to really consider the motive that might exist for the different groups that may have stolen the body and how they might have benefited from the body being stolen. So there are 3 possibilities of who stole Jesus' body. The first is the Jewish authorities. The problem with the Jewish authorities is they have absolutely no motive. They would have loved to produce the body. I mean, this group, this growing movement of Christians were like a thorn in their side, and they would love to desperately put it out of existence. And they could have saved a lot of time and money and effort on the part of the Roman government in terms of persecution. And so they had no motive. The second group is the Roman government, who also had no motive. They also would have loved to produce the body in order to squash this movement, which later became a very significant thorn in their sides. So really it comes down to the third group, the disciples. The enemies of Jesus took several steps to prevent the disciples, however, from stealing the body, such as sealing the tomb, providing a guard of soldiers to watch the tomb, and the soldiers at the tomb wouldn't sleep for fear of death, for falling asleep on their job. But during the crucifixion, the disciples were cowards who abandoned Jesus. And one of the disciples, Peter, denied that he even knew Jesus to a young servant girl. And the disciples didn't understand his purposes or the importance of the resurrection. And these guys didn't have the courage to pass by the guard at the tomb, silently move the extremely large stone, rob the grave, and leave undetected. It's not like they're going to say, hey, we're going to steal the body and then we're going to lie and claim that the body was resurrected. And then we're going to have the unspeakable privilege of living as penniless evangelists, wandering around the rest of our lives, being beaten, whipped, thrown in jail, and put to death. I mean, this is one of those theories where it literally makes no logical sense to believe it. And you might say, but Pastor Scott, people die for their faith all the time. And these guys even went on to be martyred for their faith. So what's the difference? Well, yes, people do die for their faith. They will die for their faith if they believe that it's true. But people will not die for their faith if they know that it's false. So this brings us to objection number 3, the hallucination theory. This theory claims that these people had such an anticipation of the resurrection and were so excited about Jesus rising from the dead that they actually projected their own hallucinations because of this strong desire. They thought they saw Jesus because they wanted to see him so badly. The problem with this theory, 1, hallucinations are not group events. It's like saying, hey, remember that dream that we all had last night? It just doesn't happen. Hallucinations are not shared in groups. The second problem is they weren't expecting the resurrection. Mary goes to the tomb with spices to anoint Jesus' dead body. She wasn't expecting him to be alive. She was expecting him to be dead so she could anoint him. The disciples ran to the tomb, and they did so because they couldn't believe that Jesus wasn't there. They didn't expect him to have risen. And the third problem with the hallucination theory is that Jesus appeared to believers and unbelievers alike. He appears to James, who is the brother of Jesus, the half-brother of Jesus. James was not a believer. James was not a follower of Jesus until that moment when he appeared to him. So he didn't believe, therefore was not hallucinating out of something that he really desired. 1 Corinthians 15 mentions that Jesus appeared to more than 500 at the same time. And it's impossible for 500 people to have the same hallucination. Those who saw Jesus after his death didn't expect to see him and were surprised by him being there. And psychiatrists agree that hallucinations require expectation. Basically, some element of expectation is needed. Well, that's it for today. Come back on Thursday, not tomorrow, but Thursday, for the next episode in this Factor Fairytale series. Tomorrow, however, check in for this week's youth group at home, and we've got a little special addition to it that you're going to enjoy this week. But for now, just know that you are missed and loved. God bless.